Is Robert Whittaker a controversial champion? So I recently made a video detailing Jan Blachowicz and his recent run of destruction, including his 2 victories over UFC Middleweight champions in Luke Rockhold and Israel Adesanya. But this led me to stumble upon an even more shocking fact. Robert Whittaker, Bobby Knuckles, the former middleweight champion, the man who held the interim belt from the 8th of July when he won it in a war with human Ninja Turtle Yoel Romero. He then got promoted to the undisputed champion after GSP vacated the belt and would hold the UFC Middleweight title from the 7th of December 2017 until he lost it against current champion Israel Adesanya at UFC 243 in October of 2019. Guys, Robert Whittaker was the champion for almost 2 years, and it was well over 2 years from when he first gained the interim title to when he lost the undisputed belt. During that time, practically no one discredited Whittaker's title run. I mean, sure, it was plagued by injuries and inactivity, but given what he went through in his 2 wars with Yoel Romero, I don't think anyone was ever holding that against him. But here's the thing, guys. Robert Whittaker has never defeated a UFC champion. Never. Not a former champion, not an interim champion. No man who has ever touched UFC gold has lost to Robert Whittaker. I mean, how crazy is that? Whittaker is the first person in UFC history, excluding the first champions in each division, the inaugural champions, to have never have defeated a UFC title holder, past or present. Had Yoel Romero beaten the scales at UFC 221, this story would ring a little different. But as it stands, Whittaker remains the only person to have never defeated a past or present UFC champion. The only other example of this I can think of, but we also have to take it with a pinch of salt, would be David Figueiredo. But it's going to be very difficult and very unlikely that he will ever defeat a past UFC champion, as Henry Cejudo has retired and is likely only going to come back for a big money fight, and Mighty Mouse left the UFC years ago. That being said, he could still get a championship scalp in former bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt. But leaving Davison out of this, it does beg the question, how did Robert Whittaker make it to a UFC belt and cement himself as the top middleweight in the world without having ever defeated anyone to have held a UFC belt? And cast your mind back to 2016. Robert Whittaker was an emerging fighter at middleweight. He had recently moved up after trading wins and losses in the welterweight division and was riding a 5-fight win streak going into his matchup with Derek Brunson. Following 2 impressive knockout performances against both Derek Brunson and Jacare Souza, Robert Whittaker found himself across the cage from Yoel Romero at UFC 213 on the 8th of July 2017, fighting for the UFC interim middleweight title while current champion Michael Bisping was out on injury. That fight would obviously never come to fruition. Bisping would instead go on to lose his title to GSP at UFC 217 in November, and Robert Whittaker would later be promoted to the undisputed champion when GSP vacated his belt. Robert Whittaker would go on to fight one more time as champion against Yoel Romero. Unfortunately, Yoel Romero again missed weight, and so the title was not on the line, which means Robert Whittaker's already potentially controversial title run ends without a single successful defense of his belt. Now, since losing the belt, Whittaker has come back strong with very impressive performances against both Darren Till and Jared Cannonier. So I'm not saying that he couldn't potentially add to this legacy in the future. And I really want to reiterate, guys, I am not hating on Robert Whittaker. But just going off of these facts, does Robert Whittaker have the weakest legacy on paper of any champion in UFC history? In 10 years' time, when no one can remember the wars with Yoel Romero, when all we have is that paper record to look at, how will Robert Whittaker be remembered? I would like to point out as an honourable mention here that Cris Cyborg did attain her belt without ever defeating a UFC champion. However, she then defended it against Holly Holm. So, you guys think I'm being too harsh on Whittaker here? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next one, guys.